I had a young man, I was teaching eighth grade at the time, and I was leaving the school in December to take on a new role. And I had a young man who was very upset, cried, the day that I announced to the class that I was leaving. It was like I was leaving right at Christmas and I wouldn't be returning after Christmas break, winter break. And he shared with me, and I asked him, I said, "Why are you so upset?" I said, and he was like, "Just all of the men in my life leave me." And he shared that, his dad was incarcerated, and it was just hard to have another man that he had developed this relationship with leave him, right? And so I promised him that I would stay in contact with him once I left, and I kept that promise, right? And I went from being Mr. Thomas to Uncle Kareem. I went to his wedding. We stay in contact. So I don't have siblings, so he is my nephew, and so that's one of those stories. And every time I talk to him, it always reminds me of like why we do this work and why this work is so important.
Yeah. Hi, and welcome to another edition of King Crush Thursday, the series where we highlight and uplift Black men because, frankly, not too many people are doing it. My name is Val Gay, and I'm super excited to bring this brother to you today. This very accomplished brother is a dedicated educator, a veteran leader in education, and he actually won the very prestigious Lindback Award for distinguished in being a leader as a principal. Something like that. He won an award. It's the Lindback Foundation for being a principal, and it was in 2021. So this brother's been doing it for a while. Please welcome Mr. Kareem Thomas. Hi, Kareem.
Hey, Val, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that you are here because your very presence just really continues to put a wedge in the door or the window of the very myopic window and door of how Black men are seen in this country and around the world, frankly. And we just really want to change how people their thoughts. We really want to show that there are more people than what they see in the media, the 3 or 4 maybe stereotypes that they see in the media, and that there are brothers like you out there who are doing amazing things in all of our communities. And so, because ultimately we want a young king who may or may not have positive Black male role models to be able to come to this repository, see the same questions answered by over 200 amazing and successful Black men, and hopefully find guidance there. And for the rest of us who are neither male or even Black, for us to be able to open up our minds so that all of us can have an opportunity to live in a better and more just world, if you will. And so I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to get started with the first question, which is, what does manhood mean to you?
I would say that manhood means to me just really, I guess it wouldn't be a typical answer, but I feel like it's just like you've been given a lot and you're required to give back to those that come after you, right? So there's so much that I feel like as a child that I was given, lessons that I learned from my dad, right? Just in terms of like just being patient with people and not always having to respond to things immediately, right? Sometimes it's just better just to sit back and kind of observe things. And I know that's a quality that I've got from him, but just teaching lessons like that you don't necessarily see all of the time. So I would say really just giving back and helping the next generation, trying to be the best example that you can. I don't think there's like really a set answer of what that is, right? And so I think it just really depends from person to person what they would say it means to them. But that would be my answer. I think it's just really setting a good example for the next generation and kind of drawing from the lessons that you learned from other strong men that you had in your life. But I would definitely, use my father as probably the strongest man that I had as a role model for me, and set a good example of what manhood was: a provider, a nurturer, a listener, someone that I could go to and talk to, get good advice from, hear great stories from, right? And just really learn from his example of the values of family, of work, of good work ethic, and just being a good person in general.
That's great. That's awesome. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Kareem, who and or what is important to you?
Well, I would say right now, probably the most important people to me are the school leaders that I work with, right? So in my role now, I coach first and second year principals in the school district of Philadelphia. So I was a principal for 10 years. And so they are very important to me because, again, this is the next generation of school leaders. So I want to do everything I can to ensure that they're getting what they need, being a listening ear for them, providing support for them. So they're important. Although I don't lead a building anymore as a school principal, the kids obviously are still important, right? That's why we do the work of education, because we want to make sure that kids are getting everything that they need in order to be successful. Obviously, my family is important to me. I have a dog, Jordan. He's very important to me. Um, I just think that right now, just the way that the society is and the way our world is, I think even people that I don't know like are important to me, because I feel like that whole human side of us, just like caring about our neighbor, is not there anymore. So really just like you watch the news or you read stories, and like your heart breaks to hear about the things that are going on across the country. So I would say like just other people are important to me right now too. And I may not necessarily know them, but their stories are important. And the trials and tribulations that they're experiencing right now are extremely important. And I think that's kind of what motivates all of us who care, right, to continue to do the work, because we just know that this is not the way that it's supposed to be. So I would say all of those things kind of encompass what are important to me right now.
Mhm. It makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Kareem, how do you want us to see you?
Well, I would say see me as a leader, see me as someone who is really passionate about changing the trajectory um, for kids of color, but specifically for males of color. I was my career began with me as a teacher, and I taught fourth grade, I taught sixth grade, but the bulk of my career was spent teaching eighth grade, and I just always look at the boys that I taught and always wanted them to, to be their best self. Not that I didn't care about the girls, right? I wanted them to be successful too, but I always just wanted the boys. I tried to push them extra hard, to really be their best selves, and to do what they knew that they were supposed to do. It's so easy to be, um, I guess, lured from into peer pressure and just not doing what you're supposed to, but just trying to keep them focused and keeping their eyes, if you will, on the prize, right? Of what do they want to ultimately do in life. So I would say that I would say as a mentor to people. So I feel like now I'm mentoring the next generation of school leaders, and even like kids that I taught, like many years ago. Many of them still reach out to me. It's funny. I just had a kid that I was his dean, had to be like over 10 years ago, asked me, could he use me as a reference for a job that he's now a teacher, and he's applying for another position in another school district. And so he asked, could he use me as a reference? So like as a mentor, and then just a good person overall, somebody that people could depend on, somebody that really cares about the community and cares about individuals.
That is awesome. What a great testament. That's so wonderful. That's awesome. Congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Kareem, what is your epic dream?
Well, I guess part of it is kind of, so once upon a time, like I thought I was going to be, education was not my, like, that's not what I thought I was going to do in life. Like I had this dream of becoming I thought I was going to be a news anchor, right? Like I thought that's what I was going to do. And like anybody that knew me like back, in high school, college would say like, hey, this guy, that's what he wants to do. Like he wants to like be a news anchor. That's all I did. I was like a news junkie. And I'm gonna date myself because like I was like had the biggest crush on, and you probably remember this name, Val. I had the biggest crush on Beverly Williams. And yeah, right. So I was like, loved her, and I used to write letters to her. She would write letters back to me. Yes, I loved Beverly Williams. And like I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. And so I got, after college, I did get a job at a radio station. I worked at WILM in Delaware and Wilmington for 2 years. They had cuts, and like I was one of the last people that was hired. I did report it for 2 years, and then somebody just suggested that I get into teaching. So I tried it out, wound up liking it 20 something years later, right? Still in education. But in the last 2 years, well, yeah, because no, well, maybe a year. Last year, I had the opportunity to host a podcast. I had, kind of pitched the idea, and this organization called MCEL, Men of Color in Educational Leadership, would sponsor this podcast that I host called Next Man Up. And so it's not being a news anchor, but it is kind of like a full circle of getting to that opportunity of like some type of broadcasting experience that I'm having again, like all of these years later. So that's like kind of a dream thing for me, like a kind of dream deferred. Looks a little different now than what I had anticipated, but it's something that I'm passionate about and enjoy having folks on to come and talk about um, issues that are important to men of color who are educational leaders.
That is so awesome. Beverly Williams. I haven't heard that name in a long
Right.
time. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Good for you. That's awesome. Excellent. So you've been answering question 5 all along implicitly, but I'm going to ask you explicitly.
Okay.
Mr. Kareem Thomas, who are you?
Well, I would say that I am African American male. I am an educator. I'm a mentor. Um, I'm a role model. Now I can say I'm a podcaster, and I would say I'm a brother, a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I'm a friend, um, and I guess most importantly, I should have started with saying I'm a son, right, to my parents, and before that, I would even say I'm a believer, and I just believe that you know. We come from a higher power, right? And that God has given us a lot, and we have gifts that God has given us, and we are called to use those gifts in the right way. And so that's who I would say I am.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
So here we are already at question 6, which is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't, or you wanted me to ask you that I didn't? In other words, what did I miss?
That's so funny that you asked that question because when I have coaching sessions, that's the last question that I ask every coaching session. Is there anything that you wished I would have asked you today? So it's just funny that somebody else uses that same question. Um, I would say just maybe like where do I see myself in the future? Um, and I would say I don't know if I can say maybe like in the next maybe 10 years or so, like still in education, but I don't know if in this role, like I think that maybe trying to go on down like that consultant lane or, doing something different. Because I think education is going to change drastically from what we know it to look like today. And I think the roles are just going to be so different than what, we're accustomed to now. So I think we're going to have to be able to change because it's going to change. So we need to be able to adapt to what's coming ahead of us. And we already see the changes now with online schools, virtual schools, like, all of those different things that were just not there 20 years ago. And we just had to learn how to adapt. So I think that, always be in education in some capacity, but, I think the role would definitely look different than what I'm doing now.
Got it. Got it. It makes sense. I think I forget what the stats are now, but prior to AI really taking over everything, the changes that had happened, I think the stat is the changes that had happened in the last 50 years of of the 20th century
Okay.
were greater than all of the previous centuries before,
Makes sense.
and so now,
Okay.
and that's accelerating ever so
Yeah.
fast, right? So
Yep.
that's 25 years we're into this new century, and it's a completely different world than it
Yeah.
was, and even in 2000,
That makes sense. Makes
and
total sense.
so that makes sense. And so I just really am so grateful that you are here. I honor you, my king. I'm so glad that your epic dream has come true and
Thank
continues
you.
to unfold and will come true. It's my prayer for you. I'm just so grateful for your presence. When you talked about starting out your career as a teacher, it's so rare to see Black men teaching in elementary and middle school, particularly where boys really need you. And having a heart for the boys is just such a beautiful thing because we all need to see ourselves, and to see
Yeah.
examples. And so that's so great. I'm so grateful. And I just thank you for being here.
Oh, of course. I just when you said that, I just thought of, and I think this story is worth hearing. I had a young man, I was teaching eighth grade at the time, and I was leaving the school in December to take on a new role. And I had a young man who was very upset, cried, the day that I announced to the class that I was leaving. It was like I was leaving right at Christmas and I wouldn't be returning after Christmas break, winter break. And he shared with me, and I asked him, I said, "Why are you so upset?" I said, and he was like, just all of the men in my life leave me. And he shared that, his dad was incarcerated, and it was just hard to have another man that he had developed this relationship with leave him, right? And so I promised him that I would stay in contact with him once I left. And I kept that promise, right? And I went from being Mr. Thomas to Uncle Kareem. I went to his wedding. We stay in contact. So I don't have siblings. So he is my nephew. And so that's one of those stories. And every time I talk to him, it always reminds me of like why we do this work and why this work is so important.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, I'm so glad you shared that. What a beautiful story. Thank you. Thank you
Of
so
course.
much for sharing that. That's beautiful. And it is so important. We just don't realize often, particularly in young people's lives, how important we are in their lives. And we can't take anything for granted. We can't leave any child behind, and we can't take our relationships and our responsibilities for granted, I believe. And so
Absolutely.
I am so grateful for you. And stay right there because I want to thank the audience for joining us this evening. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And if there's a positive and successful Black man in your life who you want to see highlighted in or hear from in this forum, please click the link below or in my bio, fill out the nomination form, and we'll take it from there. I always say success does not equal what a man does for a living. It could be the rare unicorn like Mr. Kareem, almost Dr. Kareem Thomas, who is a Lindback Distinguished Principal Award winner and dedicated educator, or not. What I really care about is the content of the man's character. So as long as what he does for a living is one, legal, and two, not hurting anyone, I don't really care. If he is absolutely impacting the community around him, starting with the nuclear family and spreading out to the rest of us. Those brothers we also want to include in this repository, and we need to see them. And so please stay tuned next week for yet another amazing king. And please remember to spread love and have a great day. Thank you so much. And Kareem, thank you so much. That was really
Of course.
wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.